And now, Daljit Dhaliwal.
The International Criminal Court recently issued its first ever arrest warrant for a sitting head of state. Sudan's Omar al-Bashir is charged with 5 counts of alleged crimes against humanity and 2 counts of war crimes in Darfur. However, without its own police force or army, it appears that the court lacks the teeth to enforce the warrant. Furthermore, Sudan isn't one of the ICC's members. Here to give us some insight is New York-based Human Rights First International Legal Director Gabor Rona. Gabor, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So Sudan doesn't recognize the court and it's refusing to hand al-Bashir over, and al-Bashir himself has been quoted as saying the court could eat the warrant. Who's going to arrest him?
Whoever arrests him will probably be someone from outside of Sudan, and it will probably be in the event that President Bashir travels outside of Sudan. So at the very least, the effect of the arrest warrant is to put Mr. Bashir either under house arrest in the sense of being restricted to Sudan, or to other countries that may be willing to thwart the will of the court, thwart the will of the Security Council, and refuse to arrest him.
What are the complexities of enforcing enforcing the warrant if he travels and lands on somebody else's soil? What literally happens? Who goes there and gets him?
Well, it's the obligation of each of the states that are members of the International Criminal Court, or in this case, any state, since the prosecution came through the authority of the Security Council, to arrest him should he appear on the soil of any other member state of the United Nations. So this pretty much puts a major cramp in the style of the president of Sudan, because it obligates each and every state on the planet to arrest him should he come to their country.
Talk a little bit about how prosecutors are going to make their case. What kind of testimony is acceptable, what isn't acceptable? What is the burden of proof?
The burden is on the prosecution to prove each and every allegation of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecutor, Mr. Ocampo, has done a very detailed job of conducting interviews and gathering evidence from Darfur, despite the fact that he wasn't able to travel there because of the restrictions from the Sudanese government. But there is already a wealth of evidence over a long period of time of rape, attacks against civilians, demolition of property, displacement of people. These activities are all very well documented, and in addition, it is well documented that the orders for these activities come from the highest levels of the Sudanese government.
The prosecutor had originally wanted to also charge him with genocide. I mean, that ended up being dropped, but there was one judge, I believe, who wrote a dissenting opinion saying that there were reasonable grounds to believe that al-Bashir had committed genocide. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Well, yes. First of all, the charge of genocide has not been thrown out the window, as it were. The judges simply decided that at this time there is insufficient evidence that the crimes against humanity, which they do believe were committed, were not necessarily committed with the intent to destroy an entire ethnic or religious group. So the problem with the crime of genocide being charged is that in addition to proving what is necessary for crimes against humanity to be proven, the intent of the individual who is responsible for them to destroy an entire group must also be proven. The judges made clear that as the case develops, if additional evidence comes to light that does shine a focal point on the intent of President Bashir to actually destroy particular ethnic groups, then the charge of genocide can be brought again.
The African Union has said that the warrant could end up hurting Darfur's peace process, and that it may even end up reigniting the older war in the south of Sudan. So they're asking basically for the court to defer for a year. Is that possible? Could the court do that, and if so, under what circumstances?
Well, there are several countries, some of which are members of the African Union, and some of them are members of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, that are asking for this deferral. One of the reasons might be that many of the leaders of these countries simply haven't gotten the memo that's been in existence for 50 years now, through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Torture Convention, the Geneva Conventions, that what a leader does to his own people is not any longer simply the right or the province of that individual leader to do, that the international community has an interest and has a stake in crimes of this magnitude. They simply have not gotten the memo that you cannot with impunity abuse your own people. And I think there are some of these leaders who perhaps have reason to fear that if this prosecution goes on against President Bashir, that some of them might be on the dock next for their own violations of their own citizens' human rights.
Talk a little bit about how does the court weigh issues of peace and justice?
It is not for the court to weigh issues of peace and justice. It is for the court to determine whether or not the evidence of crimes that are being brought before it exist, if the persons who are alleged to have committed them have in fact been shown to have committed them, sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt their guilt, but also it is within the province and the responsibility of the court to take into account the question of whether or not the crimes that it is investigating are in fact being perpetrated by those most responsible for them. And finally, it's within the province of the court to only take on cases when the normal domestic national criminal justice mechanisms of each country are unable or unwilling to do so. Those are the considerations that the court takes into account in deciding whether or not to pursue a case, not political ones.
Okay, Gabor Rona, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.